And we're going to go to our Tony Kovaleski, who has been watching these results along with us tonight. Tony.
Yeah, and Shannon, certainly fascinating as they're coming in. As you said, ABC News.
Thank you, guys.
Calling the race for Colorado Senate. Really not a surprise there. Insiders I've been talking to for the past several weeks expecting Hickenlooper to have anywhere from a 6 to maybe even as much as a 10% victory in the state of Colorado. So that's not a surprising call. I understand I've got a guest live now in Studio B with us, and Ben Engen is an analyst for the Republican Party. Ben, thank you for joining us right now. And let's start going inside the numbers a little bit. You've been analyzing the numbers for several months and several years. What have they said to you in Colorado regarding this year, 2020?
Well, 2020 was always going to be a challenging year. There's been a lot of attention paid to the turnout that we've seen in our mail-in ballots coming into this. But even before that, in 2014, Cory Gardner won his race with just under 2 points. Just to repeat that performance, he would have had to do something like 13 points better amongst unaffiliateds in a year like this between voter registration growth and the turnout that we've seen.
And Ben, again, you're a data guy. You've analyzed numbers for several of these political campaigns. I talked to insiders with the Republican camp, with the Gardner camp, and they said the path to victory was they were hoping to get 180,000 Republican voters who voted for Trump in 2016, didn't show up to the ballots in 2018. If they could get those 180,000 voters to turn out, they could win statewide. That doesn't look to be apparent right now. What's your take on that position, and why was it not accurate?
Well, I mean, that to me sounds more like a talking point than a path to victory. If you're trying to return the mix of turnout to what we had in 2016, you're still creating an environment where Republicans, by and large, lost statewide and down the ticket. Couple that with the fact that we have continued to see a bit of a leftward drift in our registration since then, and that just was never going to be enough to get you over the hump.
Well, and we're going to get into this switch from Colorado being a red state to a purple state to now what appears to be a blue state. But let's talk about those numbers in the Senate race. You and I were texting just a minute ago, and early on we said that one of Cory Gardner's paths to victory was he needed to win Jefferson County. You've looked at some of those early numbers. What are they showing you?
Well, it's a little bit anticlimactic now, I suppose, since it's sounding like that race may have been called. But in that first wave of ballots, you know, we saw Cory open in places like Jefferson County and Arapahoe County and these big suburban counties, you know, opening with a 60,000 vote deficit, which, you know, realistically is probably more votes than were remaining out there to be cast. And that's just a tough thing to overcome, even without ballots from some of these more conservative places like Weld County.
Well, and we talked, and you mentioned Arapahoe County because we said John Hickenlooper needed at least 49%. And again, we're talking early numbers, but the race has been called, and I think these two counties are very telling of why it's been called so early. You've got the early Arapahoe County numbers, and the former governor did better there than expected, at least early on right now.
Oh, yeah, definitely. As I was saying, in that first round of numbers on a percentage basis, Cory opened about 20 points down in Arapahoe County. Republicans had a good election day so far. It looks like we did lead election day ballot returns, but it was never going to be enough to make up that kind of deficit, unfortunately.
Well, and then that gets us to the numbers, Ben. When we talked about Colorado's move from red to blue, this was 2004, and you and I have talked about this at great lengths, when Republicans had a 37% to 30% registered voter gain over Democrats, and then we fast forward 16 years, that number now down 10%, Democrats staying about the same, and you can see the move went from Republicans here to unaffiliateds there. What's your take on what those numbers have said in today's election?
Well, I think the big story there is that Republicans just haven't done a very good job of minding the store between elections. The Democratic Party is pretty proactive about registering voters. They go out there and they work it, and they've managed to remain pretty stable during that same amount of time. Republicans need to do the same thing if they want to remain competitive, because during that same time, as you've seen, all of those losses for Republicans were picked up by unaffiliateds. So as the unaffiliated vote continues to grow, Republicans are going to have to, one, improve their outreach and performance amongst that group, but two, focus even more on nurturing the base that they do have.
And these numbers somewhat explain the blue waves we've seen, in addition to what we've talked about, which was the Trump factor statewide. Let's take a look at this number, because we also pointed out back in 2004, Republicans had 177,000 registered voter advantage. That's the last time the state actually voted statewide for a Republican president, and that was George Bush 43. And then you fast forward again, 16 years, Democrats now have 103 registered voter advantage, a 280,000 vote shift in 16 years. That's telling. Would you agree, Ben?
Oh, yeah, 100%. And a lot of that, for a long time, Republicans were the majority party in Colorado, and that all changed in 2008 with Obama. In just a matter of months, Republicans went from having a 200,000 registration advantage to virtually nothing. And since then, the parties have kind of traded back and forth a little bit, but especially in the past 2 years is when we really saw Democrats start to open up that voter registration advantage over Republicans. And the longer that they're able to maintain that, the harder it's going to be for Republicans to be successful in Colorado.
Ben, I think you've helped us tell the story of what we've been facing. I'm sure we'll be talking to you throughout the night. But bottom line here, Ann and Shannon, we've seen that move since 2004 to 2020, from a red state to a purple state. And now many will argue we're very much a blue state. Ben Engen, a numbers guy, helps us get there, helps us with a historical perspective, and really that will be the undercurrent as we talk about, could it be another blue wave, or can Republicans surprise? I'll send it back to you, Ann, Shannon.